Hi. Well, who enjoyed their Easter long weekend? Everybody? Great. Although it was a bit hard to tell we had one, wasn't it? Most of us weren't working or at school anyway, so we were already at home. And instead of going away and doing something, we all stayed where we were and did nothing. Still, by all of us not doing anything, we are flattening that curve, and we should be proud of ourselves. It's that sort of indolence that's going to win us this war. And it is a war. A war which, according to our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, threatens our very sovereignty. But that as a nation, according to our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison,
we will not surrender this. We will never surrender this.
Our Attorney-General, Christian Porter, calls it
Parliament's Dunkirk moment.
Of course, at Dunkirk, the Allies had given up fighting or running away. Maybe Christian meant we were the Nazis. Either way, this is a war. That's the point. A war. A war against what no less a man, and it's hard to think of one, than Donald Trump describes as...
It's a brilliant enemy.
And Donald Trump is a man not given to superlatives, unless he's talking about himself. And the leader of the free world goes on to explain just how this enemy is so brilliant.
The germ has gotten so brilliant that the antibiotic can't keep up with it. There's a whole genius to it. We're fighting, not only is it hidden, but it's very smart, OK? It's invisible, and it's hidden, but it's very smart.
And he's right. Not about it being a germ because it's a virus, and not about the antibiotics because they only work against bacteria, but about it being not smart because it doesn't have cognitive function, but about it being... And invisible isn't the right word because you can see it with a microscope, and hidden isn't right either because if they had tests over there, they could tell if you have it. But to the extent that he's suggesting that it's small, he's absolutely right. Certainly more right than our own health minister, who said...
The virus does not take a holiday.
Yeah, because if that was the case, what the hell was it doing on all those cruise ships? Anyway, I don't want to bag our government tonight. They've been doing a great job and they thoroughly deserve their Easter long weekend, which I think extends all the way to August this year. And I've got to say, they did a hell of a lot of work on their last day at the office on Thursday, passing that JobKeeper legislation. And hats off to all the other political parties for their non-partisan support for the legislation and not slowing things down with a lot of nonsense just so they could hear the sound of their own voice. If they stood up to say something, it was important.
This virus needs to be renamed the Chinese Communist Party UN virus.
Yeah, and if ever there was a time to do that, it is now, because we're all in this together. That's why the JobKeeper scheme is so vital. Sure, it doesn't cover casuals with less than a year's employment, international students or people over here working on visas, but we're only talking about, what, a little over 2 million people. And that's fair enough, because not everybody can be all in this together, as the PM said.
That is where we ultimately drew the line because, Mr Speaker, when you're putting these lifelines in place, you have to draw lines somewhere.
They just happen to be drawing it about a metre below the poverty line. Anyway, coming up later, a witch hunt, an egg hunt and a Greg hunt. But right now, a little bit of slightly muffled plain speaking. Now, first, some good news, because unlike Dunkirk, we can't evacuate all of our citizens stranded overseas. Apparently, we can't organise enough flights. But what we can do is this.
More than $1 billion worth of premium products will start flying out of Australia from tonight in a move to save the nation's struggling seafood industry from economic ruin. So the overseas travel ban has been lifted for fish. However...
People shouldn't panic about the fact that Australian produce is going around the world.
I'm not panicking, I'm jealous. Bad news, though, this week for unsympathetic landlords.
There would be a moratorium on evictions for the next 6 months.
Yeah, though I noticed they waited till they got Malcolm Turnbull out of Kirribilli before they brought that rule in. One thing I am appreciating, though, is the almost daily briefings we're getting from our politicians, keeping us informed and up to date. Here's an example.
Hi, everyone. 225 kilometres from Melbourne, 415 to go to Canberra. Stopped off at the Glenrowan Bakehouse, run by Melinda. Great small business. Getting some takeaway. Schnitzel roll. Lunch of champions.
Yeah, well, I would have liked some more detail about what exactly was in the schnitzel roll. You know, was there onion, lettuce, mayonnaise? I think the more information we have, the more likely we are to trust our politicians. Should everyone be getting a schnitzel roll? Are there enough schnitzel rolls to go around? Should I only get one if I'm actually feeling hungry? Come on, Bill, release your schnitzel modelling. And you could be in the running to win a punnet of Greg Jennett junket. 35 mils of delicious political reportage from the ABC's finest Canberra bureau chief. That's nice. But obviously the most important message the government is keen to get out to Australians in this time of crisis is that...
This is the single biggest rescue package that our nation has ever seen.
Ooh, if I do say so myself. But over the sound of Josh Frydenberg patting himself on the back...
The Prime Minister has warned Australians of a long and difficult road ahead.
Which you'll be fined for driving on unless you're going to the shops. Still, they do make a great team, these two guys, don't they? After successfully passing their job seeker legislation covering an estimated 6 million Australian employees, the dynamic duo got their Alfred to announce its plan for those on temporary work visas.
We strongly encourage them to go home.
And the same goes for the tourists.
The man behind this infamous ochre ad...
So where the bloody hell are you?
...now wants international tourists to rack off.
Make your way home.
In other words, from where the bloody hell are you to where the bloody hell are you from, and go back there now.
Oh, fuck me sideways.
Jigsaw consultant to the Prime Minister, Drabella Burt. Clearly the government is calling last drinks here, but given that many other countries have closed their borders and that you're more likely to catch a ride on Halley's Comet than an airline right now, how do you expect these people to get home?
Well, in the same way that in the past, people from overseas managed to get here, uninvited, on whatever flimsy suspected illegal entry vessels they could find.
Oh, so on a fishing boat?
Look, when an aeroplane starts its descent, people have to return to their seats. This is no different.
All right, so we've started our descent into madness and recession, and the people have to...
return to their seats.
On a fishing boat.
Safer than a cruise ship.
All right, well, these 6 million Australians who will now receive the job seeker payments, will you be testing their urine?
Well, it's not on my bucket list.
Yeah, but wouldn't the government want to be sure that these people aren't spending taxpayer dollars on cocaine, crystal meth or heroin?
Well, as long as we don't have to see them on the evening news queuing up outside Centrelink, they can have a filthy, overflowing crack pipe in every orifice, as far as I'm concerned.
Drabella Burt, thank you very much for coming along tonight.
Whipped your ass tonight, didn't I, laughing boy?
Please accept, on our behalf, this repurposed Government Back in Black by 2070 coffee mug.
Turd.
Yeah. But it hasn't all been plain sailing for the government. A criminal investigation has been launched into how a cruise ship was allowed to dock in Sydney and have passengers disembark. Fortunately, this investigation is being mounted by the New South Wales Police. So, assuming it even gets completed, nothing will be found that will reflect badly on any federal authorities, which is good news for Peter Dutton and his goons and anyone else vaguely in authority. Either that or Mick Fuller will give the NRL permission to play their matches on the deck of the Ruby Princess. Peter Dutton's food taster Brian Pegmatite. Why didn't the Australian Border Force that Peter Dutton is supposedly in charge of stop the 2,700 Ruby Princess passengers from disembarking? Surely they weren't all white South African farmers and au pairs?
We've just established a task force to investigate any instances of fraud within the JobKeeper scheme.
Sure, but I was asking about the Ruby Princess debacle.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm talking about the new JobKeeper task force. That's why there is a new JobKeeper task force.
Yeah, but the Ruby Princess was a right balls up, though, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yes. But I suppose the buck's got to stop with the Prime Minister on that one, doesn't it? Makes you wonder how many disasters a PM can be responsible for before he finally does the honourable thing and stands aside for someone infinitely more capable and bald.
Well, the public don't seem to be blaming him, though, do they? Have a look at this.
The Prime Minister's popularity has surged with an 11-point jump as the better PM.
But that just means better than that arse clown Albanese, not better than Peter Dutton.
But Mr Morrison's stimulus package could save people's jobs, could save the economy.
But Peter could save people's lives. Now that he's recovered from the virus, we could take antibodies from Peter and inject them into the entire population to provide immunity. So we'd all be indebted to him and obliged to give him thanks and praise forever. And we'd all have a little bit of Peter inside of us. Isn't that something to think about?
Not for very long. But Brian Pegmatite, I thank you.
Pleasure. Relative to the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, later on in the show, our searing expose on the Chinese billionaire who shipped 90 tonnes of much-needed Australian medical supplies worth millions to China. What a bastard. And a flattering puff piece about billionaire Twiggy Forrest, who used his Chinese connections to ship $160 million worth of much-needed medical supplies to Australia. And good on him. Plus, the Adelaide man who hoarded 5,400 toilet rolls has been banned from selling his stash online. So it looks like he'll be sitting on those for a while. But right now, as part of the ABC's commitment to supporting those isolated by coronavirus, here's Concretia Doyley with the indoor forecast.
Thanks, Shaun. It's going to be room temperature. Shaun?
Thank you, Concretia. Well...
Hey, you down there in the suit.
Yes, Stephen pretending to be an Aussie bloke.
Yeah, what the hell's going on? I can't go to the beach, I can't go to the pub, I can't go to the footy, I can't have a bloody barbecue. How's a man supposed to express his Australianness these days? That working from home means you can't even chuck a sickie anymore. You can't ring up and say, I'm not coming in today, because you're already not coming in. And you probably are sick anyway, so that takes all the fun out of it. It's dire straits, mate.
Yeah. Ah, well, she'll be right.
Yeah, I suppose.
But she'll not be all right for New South Wales former Arts Minister Don Harwin, who, contrary to his name, had something of a loss last week when he was fined $1,000 for unnecessarily travelling to his Central Coast property in Pearl Beach. Penelope Impact, as a simulacrum on the show for those in the upper echelons of our society, how do you explain the arrogance of those with privilege who think the law doesn't apply to them?
I'm sure we'd all treat ourselves as the exception if we could. The virus doesn't discriminate. We're all in this together.
Are we, though? If you've got a holiday house in Pearl Beach to go to, you're setting yourself apart from the rest of us, aren't you?
God, I hardly think so. I wouldn't be seen dead in a holiday house in Pearl Beach. Ours are in Byron, Daylesford and Eagle Bay.
But
The law applies to everybody, Shaun, equally. Don was fined his $1,000 just as much as if he were a normal person. Like that bit of rough trade up there. Ugh. Ugh. And why not? The police have to keep up their revenue somehow, now that people aren't speeding or drunk driving on the roads anymore.
Well, the virus might not discriminate, but it's going to tend to infect those who are on the front line and affect those who can't afford to escape to a holiday home.
Shaun, it's like Scott said, this is a war. And like our boys in Gallipoli, some of us get sent to the front line by those in charge so that the rest of us don't have to. When my husband and I are thinning out the herd up at Bowral, we get the little man that looks after the place for us to send some of them off to slaughter. That's the invisible hand of the market at work. And if we could see it, it'd be doing this.
Oh. Well, I hope Don's learned his lesson.
Well, I'm sure he has, Shaun. In fact, we're having a little get-together for him at our place this weekend. 100 or so people. We'd love you to come over and help serve the raw pangolin we've had flown in from a wet market in Wuhan.
Well, I'd love to, but...
It's marinated in bat urine.
Well, sadly, I've got a thing. But to thank you, Penelope, for coming in tonight, contrary to the unnecessary travel ban, please accept, on behalf of Mad as Hell, a Pete Evans Biorhythm Slicer Dicer, guaranteed to cost $1,500 or your money back, less 90% postage and handling. That's nice.
Oh, I've already got one.
Yeah. But how do we pay for the $130 billion JobKeeper program? Where do we get the money? Walben Hecht, you work at the Reserve Bank printing money, is that right?
No, Shaun, it's a very old-fashioned way of looking at it. No, we're far more modern nowadays. No standing around cranking a handle and actually printing the cash or minting the coins and then putting them in a vault that you can go into secretly and swim around naked. No. Now, that's a very fanciful, albeit appealing image. But, no, these days I just sit at my computer and press a button every second or so and create digital money. And
you give this money to the government to give to us, unless you're a casual employee employed for less than a year, an international student or on a working visa?
No, Shaun, we can't do that. No, that'd be very wrong to just create the money out of thin air and just hand it over direct like that. That'd be like counterfeiting. And what we do is more like money laundering. We use the so-called money to buy something from a third party, in this case high-yield, low-interest government bonds held by the commercial banks.
And what are the government bonds worth?
Nothing.
All right, so money that's just made up anyway is being used to buy something that's worthless, which the government then borrows against to pay businesses that aren't open, to pay their employees who aren't working in jobs that don't exist.
Exactly. It's like this apple, Shaun. Right. If it never existed in the first place, that's OK, because I can imagine another one to take its place. And then I have two apples, and so on, until I have so many imaginary apples that you owe me $1 trillion.
Which I can never repay.
Exactly. It's a problem for future generations, Shaun, like climate change, microplastics, or the psychological damage caused by watching Tiger King and Pooch Perfect.
Well, thank you very much, Walben, and please accept a small token of our appreciation, this Pete Evans neutrino ray-driven replica Enigma machine and chemtrail detector, 73% paleo, and comes with a certificate of authenticity signed by the ghost of Blackbeard the pirate himself, as well as some polystyrene packing peanuts, which I understand are delicious.
Whatever.
Well, as we go to the break, is face mask a tautology? Send your entries to yes, of course it is. Have you ever heard of a bottom mask or one for your knee? Care of the ABC pedantry unit, etc. But the more important question is, I think, do we need to wear face masks at all? Now, you're probably thinking, why ask me? I'm just some bozo. Well, I might as well ask a bozo like you, because in the US, the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention say everyone should wear face masks in public, while here, a Deputy Chief Medical Officer advised us not to wear face masks if we aren't infected by COVID-19. The compromise position obviously being something like this. But before the curve started flattening, in fact, before it even started curving, one politician was well ahead of that curve in terms of protective face coverings. Now, we laughed at Pauline Hanson then, but who's laughing now? No one here, obviously. And now Senator Hanson wants China held accountable for the coronavirus.
I have no time for the Chinese. As far as I'm concerned, get out of our country, stop our ownership.
Yeah, stop our ownership. We don't want to own things. Get out of our country and take our things with you so we can't own them. And let's not let Labor off the hook here either, because their policy, as Pauline says,
was open up the borders to the Asia, to allow them to come down here. Australians learn to speak Asian, and that's the attitude of the Labor Party.
Although I don't know if there's anywhere that teaches Asian as a language, and I really think Australians should learn to speak English first. Anyway, we'll be back right after the... Actually, Walbert, would you like to throw to the break?
No.
OK. What about you, Penelope? Would you like to throw to the break? It's a great honour, apparently.
Shout out to my girlfriends in Barrel.
No.
It's hard not to get bored when you're stuck at home.
So here's some jobs you might want to get up to this weekend.
Marijuana plants should all be harvested by now, but if you still have some in the garden, start bagging those heads now to ensure there'll be no problem getting off your nut for the next 6 months. Booby trap your shed with some fishing line and a shotgun to stop your stash of flour and toilet paper from being stolen. And dob in your elderly neighbour for having 2 friends around instead of the one she's allowed.
That's 7:30 Sunday, just before another grisly murder in the English countryside that needs solving in the Birkenhead massacres.
Welcome back. And with an update of what's cooking and when it'll be ready, it's over to Jasmine and Scintilla.
That's exactly right, Shaun. Tonight, we'll be making fricasseed excaliburs of chicken neck in a mash moat of puree zygote potatoes fit for a king. What's for pudding, Scintilla?
Chocolate-covered sausages.
Excuse me, just a moment.
I'm just going to dabble a splidge of yoghurt on the tips. And hey presto, a 2-course meal that tastes every bit as good as it looks. Right, Jazzy?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Jasmine or Scintilla. Well, time now for a look in utter disbelief at the headlines with the Daily Telegraph's Chris Lorax. And, Chris, it's no secret that the Daily Telegraph likes a pun.
Oh, we do.
Be they about dogs?
Rough rescue for trapped pup.
Public transport?
Bus bid not fair.
The racing industry?
Nay to horse plan.
Football?
Sharon the love around, because Sharon is the brand of football.
Yeah, you don't have to explain it.
Yeah, right, because once you explain it, it's not funny.
Well, I think even before then. But this one here... give children the right start.
Yeah, right and right sound exactly the same, so it's the perfect one. or should I say, the perfect pun.
No, look, it's a story about literacy. Misspelling the word is not helping.
It's just a bit of fun.
And then you go and do this one. Giants narrowly rein in wet. It's raining. This time you spell rain the correct way, not R-A-I-N.
I don't know how that got through. Heads will roll.
And lastly, and leastly, in the Who Was Where column, you report that Angela Bishop was seen walking along George Street on Tuesday. It's not a pun. I'm just baffled as to why it's in a newspaper.
We thought people would be interested.
What, in the fact that Angela Bishop walked down a street?
On Tuesday.
How is that even remotely interesting to anyone, let alone the idiots who read your newspaper?
People might think about what they were doing then. Could they have been near her? Where was she going?
Well, presumably she walks down a street every day. Do you run this story every day?
Well, we don't want to hound the poor woman. She is entitled to some privacy.
But But of course, there's been one story in the news this last week that was newsworthy and for a period even bigger than COVID-19.
Despite Coles dropping mince prices, Woolworths won't be lowering theirs to match. Instead, offering deals on salmon and lamb cutlets.
Mad as Hell's Consumer Affairs reporter Giselle Quigley. Discounted mince. The stories get much bigger or more newsworthy than this.
This is a Black Angus beef event in grocery shopping, Shaun, because fresh Aussie mince can be used in a wide variety of tasty and nutritious dishes, from spaghetti bolognese to shepherd's pie.
And how far is it from spaghetti bolognese to shepherd's pie?
Not far. They're in the same refrigerated section.
Are you equally blown away by Woolworths, the fresh food people's decision to eschew a mince price drop and instead focus their discounting energies on seafood and lamb comestibles?
Particularly, Shaun, the low price on lamb cutlets, because as Coles CEO Stephen Kane admitted to me, they're so scrumdiddlyumptious and yummy.
And we'll be crossing back to Giselle as news of other great value buys come to hand. Any update, Giselle?
Woolworths. 8-pack disposable paper plates, just $1. Incredible savings.
Yes, we live in extraordinary times. Well, still to come, sport with Queen Elizabeth II.
Sport.
Thank you, Your Majesty. But first, I want to offer a message of hope this first week after Easter, because I know that being ABC viewers, you are all godless atheists, and that for many of you, and I hope this doesn't sound egotistical, I have replaced Christ as the most important guiding influence in your lives. And so, meaning no disrespect to religion, because I know a lot of people get comfort and inspiration from it, here is my post-Easter message. Now, gripped as we are by the effects of this terrible virus, it's not all doom and gloom.
Fighting the pandemic will leave an estimated $1 trillion debt.
My mistake, it is all doom and gloom. But this is where the true brilliance of the government's stimulus package lies, because not only have our Treasurer and PM bought electoral popularity by stuffing money into people's pockets, but they've also bought their re-election for the next 50 years, because who in their right mind is going to vote for Labor to pay back $1 trillion of debt? Because let's face it, debt to Labor is like spinach to Popeye. They each thrive on it, unless Popeye's been working on a cruise ship, obviously. No, this is the end of Labor. They only had one idea, to run up debt to fund their policies, and now Scott Morrison's stolen it. They may as well send in the receivers and go into administration. Politics here is dead. And I tell you what, the dead do it pretty tough in this country. But then again, as Sydney Anglican Archbishop Glenn Davies saith,
we've got to think what happens after death. And Jesus has come back from the grave to tell us what happens after death.
But we don't need Jesus to tell us. We know very well what happens after death. Banks continue to charge you for financial services, and Centrelink will continue to raise debts against you. You'd almost be better off being alive. To breaking news now, and a fire has caused tens of thousands of dollars of damage to a building in the CBD. Bavina Jixwax is there. Bavina, what have you learned just about the fire? Leave anything else out.
Well, that's exactly right, Shaun. The fire started at about 5 o'clock at the rear of this popular urban loading bay and took firefighters several hours to bring under control. Once they did, they were able to get it to follow simple commands and get it to do things like pretending to be a chicken. With me is firefighter Winston Niceshirt. Mr. Niceshirt, what are your preliminary investigations telling you about the fire?
Well, Bavina, at this stage, we're saying the fire is suspicious.
Of what?
Sorry?
Of you? Is it suspicious of you?
No.
Well, you were one of the first ones here, weren't you?
No, I'm saying that it looks suspicious.
Looks? Present tense?
Yes.
The fire is out. Is the fire still going on in your head? Are you having some sort of pyromaniacal episode?
No. All right. The fire looked suspicious.
It looked suspicious. So what? It was acting strangely. What was it doing that a fire normally wouldn't do?
Well...
Was it hot?
Yes.
Was it burning things?
Yes.
Well, what's so suspicious about that? And what's a trustworthy, reputable fire anyway?
Oh, well, thank you, Bavina.
Bavina Jizwax, mad as.
Sorry, I came in before you sign off. Coming up, Donald Trump's message of hope to all those in self-isolation.
Staying at home leads to death also.
And radical new measures to keep people indoors.
This fly is dead.
Shaun Micallef's Dead Flies on ABC and iView.
Welcome back. Well, apart from essential services like making cheap sketch comedy shows and hairdressing, many businesses have been forced to shut down during the virus crisis. But how are they faring? Francis Greenslade has more.
Thanks, Shaun. One of the few businesses allowed to remain open are hairdressers.
I already did that.
What?
In my introduction, I already set it up. Just walk in and start.
Right. Let's go in, shall we? Hello, Milo. Hairdresser and beautician Milo Kerrigan has been running this salon since he retired from boxing last week. Milo, has it been difficult for you abiding by the social distancing regulations?
Thank Well, that was foreseeable.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Milo, what about the hair of your victims? How do you cut it while staying 1.5 metres away?
That's the scissor saw. What's the here? Let's move.
I won't.
That's
an interesting tool you've got there. It doesn't have a name. Does it have a name?
A special name.
Yes, what is it?
Rancher.
I see.
Well, and the sports tent, I can see right there.
Yes.
This is supposed to
Well, Milo.
Yes?
Don't do that.
Stop!
Milo, tell me, I'm curious, what about your other tonsorial tasks apart from just cutting and blow drying?
That's a good question. I was about those ones. I don't know. I was a hospital, had a roof. It's about ice cream.
No, not tonsils, tonsorial. Like shaving.
I'm trying to get Carl sister. Have this one too. Excuse me. Thank you very much for coming along. Sorry. Francis City?
For me?
Yeah, for you. Yes, sir. La. I have something special for you, sir.
Thank you.
Hurry up. 1 second. You can't ask that. It's only 4 minutes.
Little time. Milo, no, 1.5 metres, remember?
Oh, yes, of course. I never said it. You ready?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Merry Christmas. Dashing through the snow. And about that happens there. That's the other way. Ow.
It's a challenge for a master barber like Milo to offer the full range of his services. Obviously, for example, he won't be using his traditional cutthroat razor. Because he needs to be 1.5 metres away.
Yes, that's it. There we go. 1.5 metres away.
Well, not coming up because you can't ask that. Is on in a minute.
New Toyota coronavirus difficult to handle. And Josh Frydenberg tries to kill Anthony Albanese.
We can't do that. We can't, exactly.
And finally, a special shout out to SBS, who in the middle of this global catastrophe had the courage to ask a very important question.
Why are so many Aussies being seduced by sex robots?
Presumably because they don't get sick and they don't panic buy. Until next week, don't touch your face.
Done, baby.